the book is also wrestling with this question of motherhood and ambition. On the one hand, our children are the most important thing. On the other hand, if we're lucky, we raise them well, and the chemistry is right in their brains, and life lines up where they fly and they leave us. And I'm speaking personally because I have one who has flown. And then who are we? What do we have? And that's where, for me, career and passion, and for me, my writing and my teaching career are so important, because they do define me beyond my role of a mother.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I speak with fascinating people from all over the world, from every walk of life, who will inspire you to live with zest. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, and my mission is to bring you optimism about aging and help you make full use of the new opportunities that only come at this stage of life. Well, imagine this scene. A midlife woman who is a landscape historian in an unhappy marriage meets a handsome, rakish fellow scientist in a lost garden in the Hudson Valley. And that sets the stage for the new book we're going to talk about today. The book is called HEDGE. HEDGE was named a top spring 2023 book by Oprah Daily and a summer reading pick by People magazine. Oprah Daily described the novel as a thicket of lust, responsibility, and betrayal that readers won't want to escape. Today, I'm speaking with the award-winning author Jane Delury about how she develops midlife woman characters who ring so true with all of our complexities. I'm so happy to have you here today. Welcome to the show, Jane.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm really excited to talk to you. I loved this book. It's cliche, I know, but I literally could not put it down. And I do love gardening, but the scene you set and just getting inside this woman's head and really feeling her being pulled in so many directions. I felt so drawn to Maud and her character. And I was just wondering, how does one develop a character like this?
Well, thank you for saying that. The character of Maud is very dear to my heart as well. She and I have many differences, but one similarity we share, or a couple of similarities we share, is that we both have daughters. So for me, this book is really a love letter to my own daughters, who are. One of them is now in college, and the other one is soon on her way out of the nest. She has one more year in high school. But when I started to write this book, I was recently divorced. The girls were younger. And like Maud, I was thinking about second chances, starting over, and how do you do that and remain responsible for your children? So in the novel, things do get very dramatic and move into a thicket of lust, but and complication. And so in many ways, it was sort of an extreme version of the fears I faced in that midlife transition. Luckily for me, things worked out very well. I'm happily remarried, and my girls are doing great. But I think when you do make that kind of a transition with children, there are a lot of fears. So I think at the heart of the book, there's that connection to Maud, to this question of how do we reinvent ourselves and care for the people we love and need to care for. And in Maud's case, and in my case, those are children, but I think that this can be applied to different people in different situations. So I would say that is the emotional connection to her character. That's where she comes from emotionally. And then there is also her knowledge and skill when it comes to restoring historical gardens,
Mm-hmm.
and her passion and skill in gardening. I share her passion for gardening. I love gardening. I'm not great at it like Maud. So it was really wonderful to write in the perspective of a character who had an expertise that I wish I did have, and in some ways who has a career that if I had another chance, a reincarnation, maybe I would be a garden historian and bring these lost gardens back to life. So
I found it so fascinating as someone who also loves gardening and who's pretty mediocre at it. But like, you talked about some of the science where they could tell what had been grown there based on the acidity in the soil.
yes, traces of different chemicals, traces of carbon. I So once I had the idea for this book, which I actually did draft, the first draft in my own garden one summer. Every day I would go out there and write for 4 hours. I needed to do some research, not only to get my facts right, but to understand as much as I could Maud's expertise. So I spent quite a bit of time at Monticello, which was the closest historic garden with experts who could talk me through the science. And they were really wonderful. They brought me in, the head of archaeology, the head of grounds and gardens, and I learned a lot and I read a lot. And it's an absolutely fascinating field that is more common in England. Maud has this problem with the term garden historian. She says, I'm a garden historian, and people in the US don't even really understand what she means, but it does exist. And we see it in the US, we see it more called landscape architecture sometimes. And I'm not great at science, by the way, but it was so interesting to read about all of that.
Did it affect the way you garden?
I mean, you would think that writing a character who was so incredibly great at gardening would make me a great gardener. I mean, I don't want to put myself down too much in this category. I mean, my garden does look really beautiful, but I think part of the reason for that is I cram so many plants into it that something is going to go right.
It's gonna click, right. Yeah, it does its own thing, right? It has its own life.
Yeah, the plants do take care of a lot of the work themselves. Yeah, I'm kind of a chaotic crammer gardener. I don't plan. In fact, just this morning, I called a writer friend and we were talking, and I said, this afternoon I'm going to, because I find plants and gardening very grounding. So I said, I'm going to the nursery and I'm going to buy a couple more plants for this one planter. And she said to me, I don't understand how you could possibly fit another plant into that garden. I mean, I have this very tiny strip of a yard, and I have, I think,
wow,
like 30 containers, and every square inch is just jam-packed.
So you don't do that, keeping the patterning, like 3 sort of basic. No.
I try to work in 3s. I do,
yeah,
but it ends up being 12 and then
multiples of 3s.
Yeah. And I keep a map.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, actually, after the podcast, I'll send you an email with the map because you'll find it very funny. It's such a mess. I mean, it's a complete, it's sort of like the way I draft fiction. There are no clear outlines. It's just a big old mess. By the end of the summer, it's scribbled all over. But, it's still some kind of a map that makes some sense to me, but has no logic or structure.
They have apps for that.
I know. I tried the apps. And the other thing is, unlike Maud, who has a great sense of space, I do not. So, I don't like size and proportion. I read that something is going to grow 6 feet and I see 2 feet. But that's the fun of it. With my writing, I just want everything to be perfect, which is okay, but it's kind of a burden, like many of us with anything we care so much about doing well. And with gardening, I don't put that pressure on myself. So the failures feel okay. And I think it's really good for me to have a space in my life where I can just learn, make mistakes and,
You can play.
Yeah, and play.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fun. Back to the book. I was really curious about your decision, and I don't want to give a lot away, but this brief romance,
Mm.
it doesn't really end up the way one might imagine. Um, what made you decide to take it down that road, which was, I would say, fairly dark?
Yeah. So in the first part of the book, Maud she's in a very unhappy marriage, and she has not been able to pursue her career for quite a while. She was living in England with her husband and kids, and they moved back to the Bay Area for his career, and she's been stuck, and that's made her really feel stuck in this marriage. And so she and her husband have separated. He's not happy about it, but she has gone to the Hudson Valley with her two daughters, Ella and Louise, for the summer, and she's starting over. And before the girls get there, she starts this friendship with a resident archaeologist named Gabriel, who has never been in a relationship before, is very different from her, but they share, as you mentioned, they share this passion for this science and for landscape and for history.
And problem solving. I thought it was so brilliant how they were trying to figure out, was there a garden here? I don't know. We have to figure out with the lights and
exactly.
Yeah.
How can we find this? And because she needs to get the plants into the ground before it's too hot, to do it and to restore and to make this garden come back to life this summer. So she is, in some ways, like I was, very much filled with enthusiasm and this new life and energy. And then her daughters get there, and one of her daughters is really struggling, and Maud knows this, but she does not realize the extent to which her daughter is struggling. And so about halfway through the book, there is this kind of cataclysm that happens. And then we jump 2 years later, and Maud is back in the Bay Area and back in her marriage and caring for her kids. And that everything has come screeching to a halt. I knew that the book would be structured this way from the beginning. And I think what interested me, or the question that I was pursuing there, is the way that as we get older, we look back at moments in our lives and we remember how we saw reality at the time. And then from the vantage point of later, we can see what was really happening, maybe with other people, maybe even with ourselves. And I think that the second part of the book is very much about Maud trying to regain her confidence in her own impressions, because she had made this bold leap and made this big move, and she hadn't seen something that she feels very guilty about not having seen. And so that was the question that I was pursuing there, that I think is kind of unanswerable, actually. So yeah, I knew that I was not out to write a typical romance. And I also knew that in the end, we all stand on our own feet. And I think especially as women, that's really important. And so there was no white knight who was going to be sweeping Maud away to her new future. She had to figure it out.
I see. Yeah. Cause I was a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, I know.
That, it was so wonderful. And, you kind of hope that she's going to leave this boring, guy and find true love. But that would have been, I guess, a romance novel, and that's not what we were going for.
Well,
so yeah.
And I hope by the end of the novel, Maud is in a new, exciting place, and ready for new reinventions. But yeah, I do think with this book, some readers are going to, well, I already know this. Some readers are going to love that surprise, and other readers are going to say, "But the romance, he's a great guy, Gabriel. It's really lovely." And so I'm sorry to those readers, but that was from the beginning. That was the book I knew I was writing.
I see. Well, and then it brings us to quite a bit of Maud's experience and time taking care of her daughter who is, struggling in the beginning and then really needs some heavy supervision.
Mm-hmm.
She's dealing with some mental health problems. When you formulated this book, did you know that's where you were going to take it, that this kid was going to really be suffering and needing some intervention?
Yes, definitely. I knew that something was going on with Ella that Maud wasn't quite seeing, and that was there. That was what was going to blow. And then, when our children, for anyone who has children out there, when our children have a problem, everything does stop, and that becomes the most important thing. So. But the book is also wrestling with this question of motherhood and ambition. On the one hand, our children are the most important thing. On the other hand, if we're lucky, we raise them well, and the chemistry is right in their brains, and life lines up where they fly and they leave us. And I'm speaking personally because I have one who has flown, although she's flying back on Sunday, which I'm very excited about. And then who are we? What do we have? And that's where, for me, career and passion, and for me, my writing and my teaching career are so important, because they do define me beyond my role, my very important, but my role of a mother. So. Yeah, I don't know that there aren't easy answers to any of these questions, but but those are some of the questions that I'm hoping I'm grappling with in this story.
Would you say that Maud is a distinctly modern woman in that way, or do you think her psyche, we could have seen this if we would have understood the psyche of a woman in the 1950s or 60s?
That's a really interesting question. Maud, I think Maud is a modern woman. However, she comes out of a very traditional Irish Catholic background, where in her particular Irish Catholic background, there is a traditional role. Her mother is kind of a product of a different time, and that's been Maud's role model. She's and she wrestles with this in the book. The structures that we inherit in our families, the expectations we have for ourselves based on what our parents expect of us. And so, yes, she's a modern woman, but she in some ways is not, she's not as liberated as she could be. And for me, this is partially a Bildungsroman for a woman in her early 40s who is finding a different kind of liberation, I think, over the course of the novel.
Mm-hmm. Hi, everyone. Have you listened to my interviews with Dr. Bill Rawls? He's been on the show twice, and after I read his book on cellular health and learned about his high standards for quality control, I was sold. I placed an order for Vital Plan supplements immediately. And I encourage you to learn about his work by hopping over to vitalplan.com. If you enter Zestful15, they will give you 15% off your first order. I'm excited for you to try these products. I think you're going to be very impressed. Now back to the show. I'm curious, writing a book, taking on a project like this, and you're clear it's not autobiographical, but that there are some elements that you have in common. Does it change you as a woman and your perspective as you grapple with these questions, as you wonder about Maud and her perceptions, how she's thinking, what she's learning?
Yes, I think when you, as a writer, spend time with someone who is like you but not like you, you learn from your character in some ways. And some of that happens as you're writing the book, and some of it happens when the book is done. So this is something that is probably very obvious to other people who know me, but one aspect of this book that I realized recently, I was kind of working out in the writing of it, is that I have created, after my divorce, felt the need to create a new family, a new geometry with my two girls. This sort of, I thought of it as this triangle where we'd been a square, which I'm sure many people have used this analogy before. But I did meet someone, my first date kind of went well, and I am now married to him. I can hear him downstairs doing the dishes, actually. And so my, Don and I, he is also a writer, and he was living in Philadelphia for the first years of our relationship. But we did end up getting married, and he has lived here for quite a while, and he's part of the family. And my daughters call him Step Dude, but that, the work of creating a new family and figuring that out, I think was work that I've been doing in writing this book. And it only is sort of clear to me now that that's part of what this book is about, is how do you recreate family when your family changes.
Which they all do eventually.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And that's sort of where we leave Maud, is that she has a new paradigm without giving anything away. And I think, that the shape will change again for her probably, but we'll let readers decide what they think when they get to the end.
It's funny when you read a really good book, or when I do, and I've heard other people say this, and it's over, you feel sad and like, I miss that person. Yeah. What's happening to them, as if they're, alive and doing their life. And I wonder what it's like as a writer when you're finished, you put it out in the world. You have been so in Maud's head and trying to understand how she is in the world. What's it like then to put that, to close that chapter?
That's another good question. She feels like part of my family in a way. I mean, but she's living on the other side of the world or something. and
you don't have that much contact.
Yeah, we don't have and she doesn't have a good cell signal. So I know what you mean about missing a character when you finish a book, and that, to me, that's the mark of really loving a book, is when I feel sad when it's over and I want to start again. But I think for me, all of my characters, whether it's Maud or the characters in the stories I've written, the characters from my first book, they are. Yeah, they're always with me. I can access them so easily that I sort of never really lose them. And maybe that's because it takes me so long to get to a final draft that I spend so much time with them that they're like in my cells. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's just an interesting process. As a therapist, I think, like, where do these people live? That it's an intimate relationship.
It is. And, I do have a sense, I mean, this sounds weird, but it's true. And I can't go too much into it because there would be spoilers, but I do have a sense of where she, of Maud out in the world in her new life. Like, for me, the story does kind of continue for her. I mean, it's not super literal. I can't tell you what mountain she's on where she has no cell signal, but there's some sense of continuation there. So it doesn't feel completely over in terms of her character. In terms of the project, yes, I'm sure that, once I'm done with book tour, I will be hit, probably I'm expecting this the end of July with a sudden sense of like, what purpose do I serve? What's my project? All kinds of existential questions. Because a novel any book does take so much time and attention and focus. And even though it's really stressful and frustrating at times, it also does give a certain amount of purpose to life. So that's where the next project becomes really important.
I'm wondering, as someone who's put their heart into this, and how is it for you to look at reviews or hear from people saying, what were you thinking? I wanted them to, like that kind of thing. How do you protect yourself from what might feel painful?
The short answer is not well. I do. I mean, I don't mind saying it. I do have an anxiety disorder, and being reviewed is not fun for me. And in so far, I'm literally knocking on this desk. The reviews have been very positive. So, but there's always the terror of a bad review. There's always, there's Goodreads, which has also been very nice to me. But, the one really brutal Goodreads review, do I read that and say, oh, I'm just going to ignore that? No, I think about it all day. I have, and you would think I have been writing since my, mid 20s. So you would think that I'd have a really thick skin. And I kind of do, but I also really kind of don't. And that's true for most of the writers I know. And I have a lot of really good writer friends, and we support each other. And this has been one wonderful thing about this press I'm with, Zippy Books. The writers are such good friends and such a support system. I mean, I have these text threads every time one of us has a down day or a moment. We just go with
wow.
and we just give each other support and love. We've read each other's books. We give perspective. It's been incredibly wonderful. And I also have, my really good Baltimore writer friends who many of whom were in the same graduate program I was in. And so that's where I go. And I go to my husband, who's a writer who's published 6 books and has been through all the ups and downs. And that is hugely important to me, having that, support system of other people who understand those feelings.
And you may be familiar with this from reading the press, but that is the gold that helps us age well, is that sense of community, people knowing us and offering a safe haven when things are not going well. I mean, that is, that's literally the magic potion.
Absolutely. And I am fascinated by people who don't need that. In fact, in the second part of the book, there's this character, Alice, who's an artist who has, basically cut herself off from society and lives on the coast in California. And she and Maud strike up a friendship, and they go hiking together, actually, really regularly, and have that other connection to landscape in a different way. But I am not like that at all, which I think is what intrigued me about Alice. I do need my solitude to write. I just went away to the Shenandoah National Park by myself for a few days and was offline and just went hiking, was by myself. And writing is a very solitary task. So I have that introspective, introverted side to myself, but I really need my community. And another thing about having a book out, and it's probably not just having a book out, it's just needing to be on social media, is you become so aware of how you're appearing and how you're presenting yourself. And I find it so important to have people who really know me and who reflect me back to myself at times like this.
I see. I'm interested in this trip to Shenandoah Valley. So is this the first time you've taken a solo off the grid trip?
So first, I need to be honest, because I would love to say that I was, camping, like hiking the Appalachian Trail with a pack on my back. But no, I was staying in the lodge.
Yeah.
Although one of my goals for my 51st year is to go to hike the Appalachian Trail and to sleep out one night.
Wow.
So I'm going to try to make that happen. But so when I was first divorced and the girls were younger, my first marriage, I was married to someone from France. I had met him in France, and we had his family, who were also my family by then, in France. So I was traveling a lot internationally, and having and with the girls. But when this transition happened, I couldn't afford it. And so I wanted to find a place where we could go that would be sort of ours. And it couldn't be one of the places where we went, in the former paradigm. I needed sort of virgin territory, so to speak.
Right.
So that was Shenandoah National Park. And we would go once or twice a year. I tried to do it a couple times a year, and we would go hiking. And I have just so many wonderful memories with them. And we had so much fun. And, one of these trips, we I said, let's hike that waterfall instead of the trail, which was a terrible idea.
Goodness.
And so the three of us just slogged to this stream for, 4 hours. Anyway, we just would have adventures and laugh, and it was an amazing time. But I guess it was last year, no one could go. They couldn't go with me. One of them was with their dad and, on a trip. And the other, I think, Margot was working, or she was, still in Connecticut at school, or something was going on. And so I went by myself, and it was kind of, I missed them, but it was also really amazing to be in nature by myself with no signal, hiking and just thinking. And so this year I did it again, and I'm planning to make it a regular thing, and maybe even, now I'm starting to have ambitions for even longer trips. I think it's, my husband is a windsurfer. He was off windsurfing for a week. I am kind of sun phobic, not into water sports. And, we spend a lot of time together. We're both writers. We're home. We have lots of quality time and trips. And so, I think this is kind of going to be our thing. He'll windsurf and I'll hike. And I'll go back with the girls when I can. But there is something really amazing about just being by myself in nature and remembering, sort of thinking about, well, who am I out here with the birds and the trees? And honestly, by the third day, I'm not even thinking those thoughts. I'm just being with the birds.
It's such a different experience.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I love hiking. I always have, but this is definitely something that I think is going to be a big part of my life in this next empty nest era.
Do you get inspiration when you're hiking about characters and projects?
I do. My mind starts to drift, and it's having just done this, I can reflect on it. But for the first day or so, I have a very whirly mind. So for the first day or so, it was just going to problems, projecting, planning, that kind of stuff. And then the second day, I felt it start to float into fiction. And yeah, so I get sort of ideas, or I start observing the world better, which all writers need to do, but it's sort of like everything in modern life works against that. And so I started to see the shadows, cast by the ferns, like see the wildflowers, like actually see the colors. And I get that from my garden too, really. I do. When I, go out and in the mornings and walk it and see, what's bloomed overnight, what has powdery mildew and is probably going to die.
Yep. Just observation. Yeah.
Just observation and quiet is really important.
That's a meditative practice right there.
Yes, I try. I also try to actually meditate. And and I do it for a while, and then I get busy, and I'm back on that. I need to start meditating every evening again. It's always a process of trying to do the things we know we need to do for ourselves.
Yeah, sure. Well, it sounds like you've created your own garden meditation in terms of checking in with the plants and noticing.
I think maybe I kind of have. Thank you for letting me think I've done. I've
a nice reframe. Yes. free of charge.
I'm going to keep subscribing to the comment.
All right. That sounds great. Well, this is a beautiful book. It really is. It's just so rich, and there's so many dimensions to it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it and was sad when it was over. So I want to encourage our listeners to go check it out. The book is called HEDGE, and again, it's a beauty. So
thank you so much, Nicole, for saying that.
Where can people find out more about you, Jane?
So probably my website is the easiest, www.janedelury.com. That has all the, information about, HEDGE and where to buy HEDGE, and, about my first book as well. And please reach out, email me. I love when people email me. My email is right on the website. So,
and it's Delury, Delury, for
That's
people
right.
who are interested in reaching out. Sounds like I suspect you're going to get an awful lot of gardeners who are going to
I love
want to
hearing from
connect with you.
gardeners. I love hearing from gardeners, and I am always open to gardening tips. So anyone who wants to, help me out there, it would be great.
Oh, good. Well, best of luck with the book. Sounds like it's doing really well, and best of luck with your garden. Thanks so much
Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. To find out more about the podcast, hop on over to zestfulaging.com. And while you're there, sign up for my weekly email newsletter, The Insider, where you will get fun and quirky tidbits about the show and my exploits, including when I went python hunting in Florida and my participation in the National Senior Games. And if you love the podcast, I'd be grateful if you shared it with your friends. Our music is courtesy of Judy Banker, who was a previous guest on the show. Find out more at judybanker.com. And our technical director is Stephen Litweiler. If you think decluttering could help you feel better and you could use a little assistance with that, check out the online course I've developed with professional organizer and designer Carrie Luderin. It's called Too Much Stuff. And Too Much Stuff is different from other courses or articles or guidance you may have used up. We give you clear steps to deal with the clutter and the tools to help you face the overwhelming feelings and the emotions that come up when we're going through our clutter. And a lot of those emotions are just feeling anxious or guilty or just basically flooded with a lot of different confusing feelings. The course is really practical. It's realistic. The lessons are short and punchy, and they're really manageable. We're not trying to set you up for some long exploratory, super in-depth, burdensome experience. We want something really helpful for you right now. We all need help with our anxiety. So being surrounded by more calm and less chaos can really help. So now's a good time to clear out the clutter so we can focus on what's really important in our lives. So find out more at zestfulaging.com. You'll see more about this under the web courses tab. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email at zestfulaging@gmail.com. Thanks so much. And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest.